Hey, today's video is sponsored by the Bass Guitar Survival Guide. It's actually a course that I released with my friend Rhett Scholl over a year ago, but we're re-releasing this course with a bunch of new material. This is a course for guitar players that are learning bass. So this is a crash course on how to play bass like a bass player. Right now it is on sale. It will never be this cheap again. Usually it's $79 and now it is $39. So it's more than half off. The link to that is in the description and I hope that you check it out. Now that that's out of the way, let's start the video. Okay, this video is about bad hangs, things that musicians do that, unbeknownst to them, cause them to lose credibility with professional musicians. I'm going to help you navigate the minefield of bad hangs to avoid, and hopefully you'll make it through unscathed to the other side. So a very slight offense will be a yellow card. A pretty bad offense will be an orange card, and an egregious, unforgivable offense will be a red card. These are just things that you should know. I mean, you can decide what you want to do with that information. I'm dividing these potential musical sins into 6 categories. Stage etiquette, how you behave on stage. Green room etiquette, how you behave behind the scenes between bands. Musician aesthetic, these have to do with stylistic decisions of presentation. Musical sins, so things that you may do with your instrument or your abilities. Gear opinions, and then just general bad hang and or disrespect. Playing during sound check, noodling while people are trying to talk or sound check, that's definitely a solid yellow, and if you do it too much, it is going to become a red card situation. There's a few reasons for this. I've run front of house, I've run monitors. If you're trying to ring out the room, you're trying to isolate some feedback, you're trying to like tune the tom drums or the floor tom, you need to be able to isolate things and focus on what you're doing. And if you're trying to critically listen and solve a problem and someone over here is just noodling, it makes your job impossible. In between songs, if someone's trying to communicate during rehearsal, if you're sound checking, actively sound checking, these are not times to be playing over someone else. It's rude and it makes someone else's job difficult. I will say there are times when it is appropriate to noodle. I think especially when you first get to a venue, you first plug in, the sound check has not officially begun yet, and you kind of just play for a minute and listen to the room. This is a good time to EQ your amp a little bit or to make some little fine adjustments on your tone before sound check begins. But once you're in that official line check where the engineer is going down the line and saying, hey, let's hear the floor tom, let's hear the kick drum, let's hear the rhythm guitar, everyone else needs to be quiet. You need to give the engineer some space to work. There's a time to play. There's a time not to play. If you can avoid the times to not play, it will make everyone's job easier and they will like you a lot more. Monitor divas. What do I mean by that? Someone that makes too many requests for monitor changes. I think church musicians are often the worst at this. When people are like, hey, can you pan the rhythm guitar another 5 degrees to my left ear? Can you? No. Asking for too much, I think it's a bad hang. I think there is a certain amount that is appropriate, but then you can cross that threshold and it will become a yellow card. Now, keep in mind, if you're the headlining band and we have time, sure, go ahead and get your mix perfect. But if you're the opening band or we're running behind and you're doing these little micro adjustments, like I think there's a time and a place. It just makes you look bad. If you do it during the show in a rude way, you projecting that frustration during a show is like super unprofessional. So being a monitor diva, strong yellow card for me. By the way, I do these polls on Instagram, and a lot of these were submitted by a lot of you. Follow me over there because you can have your opinion in a future video. Okay, next one, slightly related. Complaining from the stage to the crowd. Immediate red card. Music is a privilege, and even if the show is not your best, it's your responsibility to give them the best show that you can, and complaining will immediately negate that. Red card. All right, next up, taking the stage and taking a long time to noodle and to tune. I don't know. I'm going to give that a yellow card. That's not the most egregious of sins, but I think that it does make a poor first impression. One tip, before a show starts, let's say we're 10 minutes before the show, I will discreetly go out and tune my instruments and set them back down before the show begins, or have someone else do it for me. And then when I go out on stage when the show begins, I will very quickly make sure that it's still good to go. Anything that you can do to make your show cleaner, punchier, more professional, cutting down on dead time, cutting down on like little awkward moments like that, I think these are good things to do, and they make the show feel better, feel smoother. Going out on stage and noodling right before the show begins, bad impression. All right, next up, not being kind to the sound engineer, even if that engineer is grumpy, a red card. You do need to stick up for yourself. You can't be walked over, but I think there's usually a reality where everyone can be respectful. Showing respect usually brings respect back to you. That's how I try to approach things. So as much as possible, be kind to your engineers. Okay, not mentioning other acts on the bill from the stage. An orange card. It's not a red card, but it's not a yellow card. Let's say you're the opening band. Hey, are you excited for so-and-so, the headlining band? You need to say that at least one point in your set. Or maybe right on your last song. Hey, this is our last song. Thank you so much. Stick around for so-and-so, the headlining band. Likewise, I think the headlining band needs to at some point say, hey, how about so-and-so? What a great show. Thank you so-and-so for being here with us tonight. Bare minimum. You need to say that at least once. I'll give you a quick story. And this is not to name drop, but I think this is relevant to this video. I had a special honor with my band. We've got to open up several shows for Willie Nelson. Every show from stage, Mr. Willie Nelson said, thank you, Noah Guthrie, for being here. And he did that every time. There's no reason any headlining band shouldn't do that. Always shout out to the other bands from the stage. Next one, being visibly inebriated on stage. If you cross a line where you're not playing as well, or you are behaving unprofessionally, that's absolutely unacceptable. Where that line is, I think that's different for each individual, and I'm not going to pass judgment on that. So set your own standards and show respect to yourself as well as others. Packing up gear on stage during a short changeover. When your band finishes and there's another band that's waiting to come on, in that moment, your job is to get your stuff off the stage as efficiently as possible. Don't go to the bathroom. Don't go to the bar. Don't go talk to the fans. Don't sit there and meticulously wrap all your cables one by one. You need to get your stuff off the stage as fast as possible. If there's union stagehands there, usually they'll march on stage. Hey, I'm here to help you. What I'll do in that instance is I'll just kind of become the manager of my space and say, the cabs are ready to go. The head is ready to go. And then they'll start taking that stuff off. I'll start loosely wrapping cables, putting them on my pedal board when they come back. Hey, the pedal board's ready to go. And then within like 2 or 3 trips, all of my stuff is off stage. And then once all the stuff is off stage, I'll help the other band members. Once all of our stuff is off stage, then is the time to carefully, methodically wrap your cables, put everything back in place. Take your time with it. It's just a part of being a team player. Try and get your things off stage as quickly and efficiently as possible. Okay, not being confident on stage. I don't think that's even a yellow card necessarily, but I will give you a couple tips. It's better to look at the hi-hat on the drummer's kit than at your feet. When you look down at your feet, you look like you're not engaged with the show. You don't look confident. But if you're looking at the hi-hat, it looks like you're locking with the drummer because you are. That hi-hat is sort of the metronome of the song. But then from the audience perspective, the band members are looking at each other. They're connecting. They're listening to each other. That's a better show visually. When you're not looking at the hi-hat, here's a trick. Look at the exit sign in the back. You don't have to look at the people if you're scared to look at the people. Look at the exit sign in the back. Just find a point on the horizon above the people. Body language is huge. Put your shoulders back when you play. It'll look like you belong. Even if you don't feel like it, by having the right body language, you might convince yourself you have a little more confidence than you think you do. So those are a couple tips. Look at the hi-hat. Look at the exit sign. Put your shoulders back. Take a deep breath. You've got this. Even if you aren't confident, project confidence. Fake it till you make it. The confidence will come with time. Friendly reminder, this video is sponsored by the new bass course. Really, really believe in this course. This is for guitar players that want to play bass without seeming like guitar players playing bass. Play bass like a bass player, not like a guitar player. The link to that course is in the description, and I hope you check it out. Okay, green room etiquette. This is more about how bands and musicians interact behind the scenes at a show. First up, not talking to or saying hello to the other bands in the green room of a show. It makes it so weird. Agreed. You don't have to be best friends. Here's an example of how to do it. Hey, my name's Philip. I play with so-and-so. I'm really looking forward to hearing your set tonight. That's all you need to say. You don't have to be best friends. You just need to project a little bit of, hi, I'm friendly. I'm a human being. I recognize that you're here too, and we're going to share the space. The green room space itself, I think that there are some sort of unwritten rules. Whichever band is about to perform next should be given the priority of that space if it's crowded. A pet peeve of mine is when like other bands in the bill are bringing a bunch of people back there that aren't in the band and they're kind of having a party vibe. It's cool and all, but hey, if we're about to go on stage, you need to like let us have a moment to talk, to change clothes, whatever, right before we go on stage. The green room becomes your sort of home away from home for the night. So just being respectful and accommodating with that space and with the other bands goes a long way towards just a positive night for everybody. Okay, next up, bands not being respectful of other bands' setup times. Yeah, that's definitely a red card. The higher you go on the ladder in the music industry, the more valuable time gets. If you're just doing local rock and roll clubs, it might not be a huge deal if you're 15 minutes late, but if you're doing a stadium tour or theater tours and you're opening up for a major artist, 15 minutes is a big deal because you're potentially wasting 15 minutes for hundreds of people that can't do their jobs well, and it reflects really poorly on you. Just build an extra hour into everything with your travel schedule, at least an extra hour. Okay, here's a really good one, the last minute backline discussion. What does that mean? Backline is the common shared equipment on the stage. Oftentimes, we will backline the drum kit or backline the bass amp or backline the guitar amps. Sometimes this is provided by the venue, sometimes it's provided by a rental company, or it is provided by one of the bands. And it's basically, hey, instead of every band switching drum kits between each set, everyone's going to share the same drum kit. This is for efficiency, and it will just make the show run smoother. But what you run into sometimes is this conversation not happening in advance, and that is where the bad hang can come in. So let me give you an example. Let's say the show is Friday. Let's say there's 3 bands. One of them is an acoustic duo. The second one is a 4-piece rock band. And the third band is a 6-piece rock band. This is the right way to do it. The second band proactively reaches out to the headlining band, sends an email or a message. Hi, we're looking forward to the show. Our drummer wanted to know if you would be comfortable with sharing the drum kit. Our drummer will bring his or her own kick drum, pedal, snare, and cymbals, but in the effort of saving time, we were hoping to share the kick drum and the toms. Let us know that if you're comfortable with that. If you're not, no worries. We were just hoping that this could help move the show along. That is the right way to do it. The wrong way to do it is at the show during sound check saying, hey, do you care if we use your drums? Those conversations need to happen in advance, and they shouldn't be assumed. If I'm using someone else's bass amp, what I will do is I will take a picture of their amp before I touch it. And then if I have to change something on the EQ section or whatever, the first thing that I'll do when I finish playing their amp is look at the picture on my phone and set everything exactly back to how it was, right? You want to be really respectful of other people's equipment. You want to set it back to how it was when you got it. I will say too, I think every band should watch at least a portion of every other band's show. That's a common respect thing. So don't wait until the day of the show or the sound check to have the backline conversation. Next up, let's talk about some musician aesthetic opinions. These are things that have to do with your style or presentation. This is one that I don't know if I agree with. Snarks or clip-on tuners. That doesn't bother me at all. Let me know in the comments. Are you team snark or team anti-snark? Personally, I'm going to give them a green card, but let me know. This category might be the most subjective. So let me know your opinions about these. If anyone talks shit about Ringo Starr, that's an instant judgment. I couldn't agree more. That is an immediate red card for me. I will not tolerate disrespect of Ringo's name on this channel. I think he's one of the greatest drummers of all time. And I also think he's maybe the greatest drummer in terms of coming up with parts for songs. So if you talk ill of Ringo, what that says to me is you care more about virtuosity or proficiency at an instrument than you do about tone and craft and part writing, which are things that I love. And I think that this is a silly example, but like anytime you have a strong opinion about a musician or a band and you start throwing it out there in a controversial way, people will judge you for that. You are saying something about yourself when you say something about another musician. Only positive Ringo remarks, please, in the comment section. It irks me when someone calls congas bongos and vice versa. Okay, just for the record, congas are the bigger ones, bongos are the little ones. But I think this leads into something bigger, which is if you misspeak about gear, people will judge you harshly, rightfully so. So if you are going to speak on a subject, make sure you know what you're talking about. What's the proverb? A closed mouth gathers few feet. If you don't know what you're talking about with gear, refrain from making a statement. Sound engineers using delay or long reverb on a vocal live. Wow, that drives me crazy. Sometimes engineers just feel like, oh, this is my chance to be creative. I'm going to throw a really long delay and a bunch of like crazy reverb on this vocal. And it's like an aesthetic decision. It's a creative decision that has not been invited, and it changes the whole presentation of the song. And if it hasn't been discussed with the artist, I think it's bad form. And I don't think that's your decision to do a creative effect like that on someone's vocal. That's my personal opinion. Let me know if you disagree. Okay, here's a big one. iPads on stage, particularly for if you're playing with an artist. I think it's a bad look. There are situations where it can't be avoided. I think if you're filling in on a gig with less than 24 hours notice, I can forgive an iPad on stage. If you have more than a day to prepare, I think it's your responsibility to memorize the music. If you're playing a wedding gig, I can forgive it a little more if you have 4 hours worth of music and you need some of the lyrics, or you're like reading some sort of like real book thing where you need to know the changes. That's a different situation. But if you were playing for an original artist, it doesn't look pro to have an iPad on stage and to be reading the music. Next up, not dressing properly for the gig. It's definitely a yellow flag. Usually the dress code is not written out for you. But every band, every gig, every setting has a certain expectation of an aesthetic sort of presentation when it comes to clothing. It's on you to figure out what that is and to come looking fit accordingly. But I mention it because I've seen amazing musicians through the years that sort of neglect this part of the craft, and it can hold you back. So make sure to show up dressed the part. All right, here's one. Related to that, flip-flops on stage. I think that's I have a personal rule. You'll never catch me on stage wearing flip-flops. I don't ever wear shorts on stage. For better or for worse, I think a lot of musicians have that rule. There's sort of an unwritten rule about that. Let me know if you agree in the comments. I'm not going to judge anybody that is going to wear shorts or flip-flops on stage, but you're not going to catch me doing it. I think the only exception is if you can see a body of water or you are playing for people in a body of water, can you have shorts or flip-flops on? I think it just doesn't look professional. Tracks with noticeable things missing. So like, for example, I'm watching a show and there's a 4-piece band and they're running in-ears and they're running Ableton and we hear brass and strings. I just think it looks kind of silly. It's a little campy. It's like, I would much rather a band try and come up with the best 4-piece version of the show than try to recreate everything on the record. That's my personal opinion. Maybe that's a little old school, but I just want to like see what I hear. All right, next up, we're talking about some musical sins. These have to do with your abilities and your choices. as a musician. One, overplaying. I'll give it an orange card. I feel like no one actually thinks they're overplaying. Years and years ago, I practiced really hard for this gig. It was with this drummer that I looked up to. I remember after the gig, I respectfully asked this drummer that I looked up to, I was like, hey, I'd appreciate any like feedback you have for me. I really, I'm trying to get at the next level. The drummer told me, he was like, hey, you did really well, but you're playing a little too much. You need to sit in the pocket a little more. And like, I really didn't think I was. You're probably playing more than you think you are. So it never hurts to simplify. Here's a good one. Not being able to improvise when something goes wrong. Things go wrong, or your ears go down, or the power goes out, or something crazy happens. Can you still make an awesome show? And I think that really is a good testament of how great a musician and how professional someone is, being able to adapt when things don't go your way. Okay, here's another one. Unnecessary inversions. This is for my bass players out there. Some bass players, when they get bored, they start to move the root note around and get creative with their inversions. But if you're playing with an artist or a songwriter, someone else's songs, and you start moving the root around, I think it can come off as rude, and you can lose trust from that artist. Let's say I invited you to my house and you're sitting in my living room, and when I got up and left the room, you moved my couch to the other side of the room. And then I came back in and I'm like, why'd you move my couch? And you're like, well, I thought that the room would just feel a lot better if the couch was over here. I would be like, that's weird and kind of rude. I think that's what it's like when bass players start moving their root around on a song, because songwriters are like, this feels weird. You're changing like the foundation of my song, and I didn't ask you to do that. There's a right way and there's a wrong way, and it's definitely not on stage changing the root. This applies not just to bass, but if you're like doing a lot of chord substitutions and things, it can throw singers off and it can throw songwriters off, and you can lose trust with them. So if you are going to do something, do it for the right reasons, not because you're bored, but because you really think it will make the music better, and do it in a way that isn't going to spook someone or make them lose confidence in you as a rhythm section member. Okay, and here's another one. Using volume to overcome bad vibes. I think lesser musicians hide behind volume to overcome bad energy. I think great musicians can play with full intensity at any volume and can take their volume to match the room that they're in. That takes mastery, and it takes time, and it takes discipline to be able to keep your volume at the right level to match the room, but to bring the right energy. That is easier said than done. My friend Trigby mentioned that one, and I thought that was a great example. Okay, let's talk about gear. Some gear opinions, okay? Someone said, expensive gear and massive pedal boards but can't play. Yeah, I think that's true. I don't know if it should be true, but I think it is. I mean, there's been times in my life where I wanted to have some premium gear that I couldn't afford, and I was a full-time musician. I was working as hard as I could to try and pay rent, and then you see someone else show up with something really, really nice. You're like, does that person deserve that? I'm not saying that's the way it should be, but I do think there is something there. I think there's something to be said for learning and gigging and getting your reps in on not the most expensive gear. One, it won't get stolen, or if it does, you don't have to cry about it. But two, it's like if you can make the not as expensive stuff sound amazing, when you can finally afford and get your hands on the premium stuff, you'll actually be able to utilize that extra little percent of quality. Sometimes fighting the gear a little bit and trying to wrangle some cheaper stuff is going to make you a better musician. So anyway, I'm not saying that's the way it should be, but I do think if you show up with some really premium gear, you better be good, because people will hold it against you, for better or for worse. Okay, here's one. Not bringing the gear they need, or bringing the wrong gear. I think there's definitely something to be said for that. If you are bringing an amp that's too big for the gig or too small for the gig, or you're playing gear that doesn't work, or it's buzzing. Reminds me of a story. There was a really good songwriter, really good band, great voice. He was playing acoustic guitar. And I was enjoying the show, but throughout the whole show, his guitar was buzzing so loud. It was an electrical problem. I think his jack was loose. And just, he'd be playing a quiet song, and then there would just be the loudest, most egregious buzzing sound in the whole PA, to the point that people were kind of jumping in the audience when it would happen. It was so loud and so distracting that, like, that's all I remember about the set. I don't remember their name. I don't remember what the songs were about. I just remember how terrible and loud that buzzing guitar was. Bringing gear that works. That doesn't have to do with how expensive it is. Literally, is it gig worthy, right? So if you're an acoustic guitar singer-songwriter, I think having a decent EQ pedal and a tuner is like part of the gig. Like, you need to be able to like safely mute and tune your instrument and make sure that the signal can get safely to front house. Same thing with bass, having a good DI box. Drummers need to be able to tune their drums, need to know how to mic up their drums. Everyone needs to know how to get their sound safely to the destination. Everyone should invest in their craft and their equipment to the point that they have the bare necessities to be able to help that process and help make sure that the sound gets safely to where it's going. Let's talk about some general, just bad hang, disrespect things. Talking BS about other musicians. Wow. That is a great way to eternally lose my respect. I think a great way to respond to this is stick up for that person. The second someone pushes back, they are going to back down and they're going to shy away and be, oh, I didn't mean anything by it. I love so-and-so. That's a way better reputation to have. I think stick up for musicians. Let people's playing and their character speak for itself. Okay, here's another one. This is important. Being unapologetically late. A yellow card situation, but 2 yellows will definitely make it a red card situation. There are 2 types of people in this world. There are people that don't care about timing, that are perpetually late, and then there are people that really, really do care about timing. So if you're the first kind, you need to realize that if you're 15 minutes late, the other kind of person is going to see that as, you wasted 15 minutes of my life and I'm disrespected. It's really going to rub some people the wrong way. Here's another one related to that. Coming to rehearsal without having practiced or prepared. Let me just tell you something real quick. Rehearsal is not where you learn songs. You learn songs at home, you rehearse songs in rehearsal, and then also, sound check is not where you rehearse songs. You sound check and sound check, you rehearse in rehearsal, you learn songs at home. It's your responsibility to show up knowing the parts, knowing the form, knowing the song at rehearsal. Your reputation will precede you, we'll put it that way. It's a bummer we have to address this, but I think it's important. This was a poll on my Instagram, and I think it's important to include. Treating women like they don't know a thing about guitar. 98% of the viewers on this channel supposedly are men, according to YouTube analytics. So I just want to talk to the guys for a second. We need to do better. We need to create a safe space for everyone in the music community, in the music world. I feel very strongly about that, and if you disagree, there's a lot of other channels out there you can go check out. Okay, here's an interesting one. Consistently bumming basic things off of others, like cables, strings, etc. I think musicians need to be self-sufficient. In fact, when I go to a gig, I usually try to bring an extra of most things. Extra strings. In fact, I'll bring aged strings. I think that's a pro tip. Rather than just bringing new strings, bring some already broken in strings. So if you break a string and you put a replacement string on, it won't sound different than the others. That's a tip. I bring extra cables, I bring extra tuner, bring an extra direct box, bring fail safes. Being self-sufficient with redundancy in your gear, I think is something to bring to the table. Next one, this is really important. Canceling without a sub. You don't want to have a reputation of doing this. There are some people that are gig jumpers, and they'll just take the highest paying gig. So if they have a gig booked and someone offers them more money, then they'll say, hey, I'm going over here. That's the wrong way. You get a bad reputation doing that very quickly. But every once in a while, there might be a family emergency. There might be, you might be sick, or maybe there's a once in a lifetime opportunity that comes your way. Eventually you will have to cancel a gig. Here's the right way. I'm so sorry. I can't make the gig Wednesday. Had something come up that I can't control. I went ahead and found a suitable sub for you. It's so-and-so. I didn't offer them the gig, but they're on standby. They're ready. If you'd like, I can go ahead and forward them all the material, and the necessary information, it's totally up to you. I'm so sorry to have to do this, but it's just something that is out of my control. That gives the band leader the decision to make the call on who they want to fill the gig in, but you've already solved the problem that you've created, right? You've already found a suitable sub. That's the way to do it. Now, I will say too, every once in a while, a life-changing opportunity may come along, and you'll be faced with a moral dilemma of, do you cancel on this other gig to do this life-changing thing? And I've been there. And I think, too, you can sort of fall on your sword with this and let things go by. This reminds me of a story. There was a time where I had a gig booked, and it was with somebody that I had a good reputation with and I'd known for a long time. And there was this other opportunity that came up that was a life-changing opportunity. And I felt really torn up about it, and it was like the next day. And I called the band leader, and I just explained the situation. I was like, hey, this life-changing thing has come up, and I really feel like I need to do it. How would you feel about that? And the band leader was like, yeah, you should totally do it. It's totally fine. We'll be okay. And I think I was putting this massive amount of pressure and responsibility on myself and sort of like feeling bad about even thinking about doing the other gig. And it actually wasn't a big deal. And basically you build up a certain amount of goodwill and grace and respect and trust with people. And then every once in a while you can cash some of that in, but you have to be really careful about how you do it, and you have to do it the right way. So what did I miss? Let me know in the comments. The one that gets the most likes or upvotes will become the addition to the list. Also, check out the course, the Bass Guitar Survival Guide. It's a guide for guitar players that are learning bass. Bass is its own instrument, its own discipline with its own techniques and mindset, and it's something that's worth learning. So if you're a guitar player that's bass curious, check it out. It will never be this cheap again, and I think there's a lot of value in that course. Thank you for being a part of the channel. Thank you for watching this video. I love making these. I love music. I love bass. I think we have that in common. So thanks for being here, and I hope to see you on another video soon.